Now, for today's message, we're on to honoring the power of our questions. And I couldn't help but think of Rilke's little book, Letters to a Young Poet. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend it. It's just very soulful about how important it is to attend to the questions we have and to not be so quick to look for others to answer them. So he gives a very masterful teaching to this young man who reaches out to him to ask, the important questions about his life. And Rilke told the young man, be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. So life's powerful questions, of course, arise from our soul's yearning, the ultimate question, to realize our true nature. But then the corollary of that one is to access the guidance we need to actualize that truth of our being, to live in harmony with it. So we have questions about how to live, and we want to know how can we access that guidance. In the first lesson in this series, How to Have Steadfast Wisdom and Compassion, was about understanding how the mind works and how we can train our mind for clarity so that soul wisdom that is within us, that's what we're waiting for, by the way, that soul wisdom can shine into the mental field, and then we can receive clearly that inspiration about how to act wisely, how to live in harmony with that divine guidance. Yoga philosophy teaches us, of course, that we're not the body, and neither are we the mind. We tend, I think, often, sort of a default is to try to answer our important questions with the mind. We try to think it through and look for an answer there, or by asking others, like the young poet did, or even checking in with Google. And, at a certain level, it's fine, for the mundane things in life, to ask information from others, or even important questions. We can gather information, and even from Google. But ultimately, what we want is not information, we want insight. And there's a distinction, and we want to be clear about that distinction. And first, we have to look at that tendency, to look outside of ourselves and wonder, why do we do that? And now I think we're becoming sort of conditioned more so to do that. I notice it most of all, when I wonder what the weather is going to be, and instead of looking outside, I look at my phone. So we're sort of training, our minds to look externally for expertise, which is really natural to us if we look deep enough, if we sit long enough. So, we forget. We look outside of ourselves because we forget that we are individualized expressions of absolute reality or God. And instead, we're identifying ourselves as the thinker or the voice of reason or not reason in our head. But that's intellect, and we're not that either. So we have to, reflect, well, who is listening to that thinking going on? Who is witnessing it? What is the observer? We're not the mind that changes. We are, our essential self is the witness of the mind. And that which we are is pure. It is unmoving, unchanging, absolute, supreme consciousness. It is spirit. We are that, and we are that light of consciousness that shines into the mind and makes perception possible. So it's really important to know this when we start looking at how do I receive guidance. We are the spiritual light that lights up the mind. We are the light that brings life to the body. And that light, that supreme consciousness, which we are, was not born when the body was born. And it is not altered when the body changes. And it does not die when the body dies. That is what we are. So the first step for learning to live with insight, with wisdom and compassion, is to realize that truth of our being. That's the foundation. Otherwise, we're identified with the contents of our own mind. We're a step away from ourselves. So first, we get that foundation. And then the second step is to learn how to clarify the mind, to clarify the mental field, so we're able to perceive soul wisdom when it shines into the mind, so we can perceive it and follow it. So we learn how to anchor our attention and our awareness in the unchanging self, instead of having our attention and awareness chasing after the restless thoughts in the mental field. And then, being tossed around by the turbulent mind, turbulent emotions, or reactions to other people or to circumstances. Okay, so first step, get the foundation in place, know what we are. Second step, learn how to clarify the mind, so we know when that light of inner guidance is shining into the mental field. Third step is learning to trust ourselves. Because if you want to receive inner guidance, generally you have to wait for it. There's the thing about our time, God's time. And generally we have to wait for guidance to emerge. So it requires trusting ourself, capital S self, trusting that the guidance will arise and being willing to wait for it. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 55th verse, that says, the Blessed Lord spoke, Lord Krishna speaking to Arjuna says, when one leaves behind all desires emerging from the mind, when one leaves behind all desires emerging from the mind, Arjuna, and is contented in the self, by the self, capital S, one is contented, abiding, not moving, anchored in the self, by the self, that person is said to be one whose wisdom is steady. So, have faith in yourself. Trust yourself. Develop that trust. I would say, most of us have trusted ourselves and then regretted it. It's part of being a human being. So, with hindsight, we say, I trusted myself, and that was a bad idea. But when we have a deeper understanding of our true nature, we see through that problem, and we understand that the problem wasn't trusting ourselves. The problem was that we weren't actually aware of what the self is. So we weren't trusting the self with a capital S. We were trusting the self with a small s, the false self. We were trusting the unreliable ego mind, with its misguided thoughts masquerading as wisdom. That's what we were trusting. That's how we, got lost. But our wisdom becomes steady when it is anchored in the true self. We can see through that. And we learn how to do that, to anchor our awareness in the true self, by meditating regularly. You knew I was going to say that, right? That's our training ground. That's how we learn how to do it. If you want to be clear enough to be able to live by soul guidance, meditation is your ticket. That's how we learn how to do it. Otherwise, our wisdom is obscured by restless thoughts. We can't find it, and when we want to contemplate a question and receive guidance, then all we get is confusion. The mind goes this way, says, oh, this is the answer, and we go, okay, and then, no, wait, this is the answer. And then we're like, what? So the mind has to get clear. And when we meditate, we can watch that. We can see how it is when our thought activity settles and we're simply aware. And it may just be a moment, but remember, we train for this. We train, and then those moments become more moments, and they become more expansive, and we're aware of being aware and free from identifying with thought activity. We don't jump ship. We don't jump the ship of the self into clinging on to what the mind is bringing up. We trust then divine wisdom and the inspiration that will arise from that. So, first, we have to have faith that soul wisdom will arise. If we want to live by guidance, we have to believe that it is possible, that we're going to be guided, we're going to be directed. But very often we panic, right? When we need guidance, we panic. So we have to have faith that soul wisdom will arise, and then have the patience to wait for it. That's the key. Have the patience to wait for it. Know how to recognize it when it comes, accept it, and then take a step towards the inspiration that was provided. One of the things I'm aware of is that life itself, is self-correcting, capital S correcting. So when you receive intuitive guidance, soul guidance, if you think that's it, you can take a step toward it. And life, that guidance doesn't stop with that one thing, with that one moment. This is about walking in God all the time, 24/7, even while you're sleeping. 24/7, so that when you take a step, if you're not moving in the right direction, you can trust that life is going to let you know. So it's a beautiful, beautiful way to live with that faith and with that trust. So it's helpful to remember that we quiet the mind so we can consciously connect with our true self. And we're not trying to become clear. We're not trying to become wise. We're not trying to become compassionate. Our essential self is an expression, an emanation of absolute reality of God. So we are, at the core of our being, already clear. So know that you already know. That's really helpful. Know that wisdom is already within you. Know that compassion is already within you. You aren't going to produce compassion. It emanates from your very being. It's a matter of accessing it and having faith in it. Stephen Mitchell's version of some verses from the Bhagavad Gita are just favorite ones for me that I keep around and bring back every once in a while, and so I want to share that with you. He wrote a version of the Bhagavad Gita. I am the self, Arjuna, seated in the heart of every creature. I am always with all beings. I abandon no one. And however great your inner darkness or your confusion, you are never separate from me. Let your thoughts flow past you calmly. Let your thoughts flow past you calmly. Keep me near at every moment. Trust me with your life because I am you, more than you yourself are. Such a beautiful version, right? So it sums it up And it really gives us kind of a step-by-step practice. One, discern the truth of what we are as the divine self, the true self. And then practice letting thoughts come and go. And you know, when we really need guidance, there's a lot of thought activity. So we have to practice, letting it come and go, and know that where we want to be is deeper than that, is beyond that. Let your thoughts flow past you calmly, or let them race by like the fast lane. However, just let them go. Let deeper awareness remain anchored in the self. You can do that. Keep me near at every moment. How do we keep that which is always present near? Through divine remembrance, through practice, through letting the thoughts flow by. Remember, God is your life. Trust that. Trust yourself. One of the most powerful ways I know to allow wisdom from the soul to arise when I need guidance is the willingness to sit with uncertainty. You know, when I say that, I just notice, okay, I'm breathing. Just sit with uncertainty and breathe. And I allow the question to remain in my heart and my mind long enough for clarity to prevail. Long enough, however long it takes, for guidance to come through. Because I know that it will. I have faith that it will. Paramahansa Yogananda wrote, "Your trouble in meditation is that you don't persevere long enough to get results." He was reading our diaries, wasn't he? That is why you never know the power of a focused mind. If you let muddy water stand still for a long time, the mud will settle at the bottom and the water will become clear. In meditation, when the mud of your restless thoughts begins to settle, the power of God begins to reflect in the clear waters of your consciousness. Just sit long enough. Be patient with those questions in your heart. This writing from Yogananda just connects beautifully with the 15th verse in the Tao Te Ching. The ancient masters were profound and subtle. Their wisdom was unfathomable. There's no way to describe it. All we can describe is their appearance. They were careful as someone crossing an iced-over stream, alert as a warrior in enemy territory, courteous as a guest, fluid as melting ice, shapeable as a block of wood, receptive as a valley, clear as a glass of water. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until right action arises by itself? To stop clinging to what we want or resisting what we don't want, to have the patience to wait until the mud of our thoughts settles, it's helpful, for us to trust that the questions we have are connected to the deepest wisdom that is already within us. That's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for that to arise. And we're remembering, what we are, that we are emanations of that one omnipresent, omnipotent mind of God. And if we have faith in that and allow our initial thoughts to come and go, until we perceive what is true and unchanging, we will recognize the wisdom that is for us, because it comes bearing peace. That's how we know. You know, we don't always like the wisdom we receive. I have to say that. It's the small print. You will get guidance. You won't always like it. But you'll know. You'll know because you experience it as right, as whole, as clear. The mind stops its restlessness, the body relaxes, and you know that you know. I could tell you so many stories about my experiences of waiting for wisdom and discovering how divinely powerful that is. It's really living the life. And what happens is we receive guidance beyond what we could decide, what we could figure out. There is a clear, calm, divine direction that comes to us if we wait for it and if we trust it. And so many times for me, it has been beyond my wildest imagination. What the divine has prepared for us if we're open to receive it. And that is really the key. So I want to close with a quote from the Zen master Dogen Zenji. He wrote, "Don't follow the advice of others. Rather, learn to listen to the voice within yourself. Your body and mind will become one, and you will realize the unity of all things. Even the slightest movement of your conceptual thought will prevent you from entering the palace of wisdom. If you can't find the truth right where you are, where else do you think you will find it?" Om.